So welcome everyone to the webinar today on what do the most influential leaders do differently. For most of you know who I am, Robin Miles, high performance coach and strategist. A number of you I know pretty well. Some of you know less well, and some of you it's the first time that we're physically meeting. So really looking forward to getting into this subject today for you. And as I said, if there's any queries or questions, just feel free, just put them in the chat, because then if I'm in a bit of a flow, it will give me the opportunity of incorporating the question in what we do. So just a question to get you going, and come off of mute and answer this. Like, what do you think are actually the key factors that makes an inspirational leader? If we're interested in this subject about what makes them different, what do you actually think are some of the key factors of an inspirational leader? So let's just go for it. Jump in the chat, just write some words. Leading by example, action over words, vision, clarity of thought, motivational. Yep, keep them going. Enabling your team, nice. Well-spoken, supportive. Hi, Robin, I'm on the train. That was a direct message to me. Empathy, dependable, trustworthy, authenticity. Cool. I reckon these words are awesome. You know, I don't think we have to do any more, do we? Like, just, okay, everyone, just do that, and then you're done. Like, Dave's literally like, yeah, okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. You know, like, so, you know, like the question I've got there is, why are they important? Why are those factors important? So maybe let's answer that question. Why are those factors that you've put there important? Why is authenticity? Why is trustworthy, dependable, empathy, a risk taker? Why is all those, why are the, you know, words that you've just put in the chat, why are they important? They're important to how I want to be led. Yep. Need to be example. Helps in believing in them. Yeah, people will like to be connected to the same. Yeah, important one, Levine. Yeah, one of the primary, like when we are thinking about high performance, for me, we always need to come back to the absolute basics. Humans are happy when they feel a sense of connection. That's why, you know, the worst case, when someone loses all sense of connection to their family, their loved ones, sport, or whatever it is, when they lose that sense of connection, that's when, unfortunately, people, you know, take their lives, for instance, because they haven't got that connection. How do we go to high performance? It's just like, we need to have a higher level of connection with people. How do we have that higher level of connection? Well, we need to act, behave, and be the way aspirationally people want us to be. So what's really interesting is that I reckon 90% of what we talk about today is not going to be, well, even 95% of what we talk about today, or I talk about today, is not going to be new to you. But then the biggest dilemma is that all those words kind of flow to you. So if that's what the key factors of being an inspirational leader are, what's stopping you being more like those words right today? And like with most things that I find, is it's a matter of, it's common sense, it's just not common practice. Why is it not common practice? Because we just, like, life is incredibly busy. There's so many expectations on us and everything else like that, and we don't act or behave the best versions of ourselves. And I know from my perspective, I haven't shown up and been the best version of myself, let alone being an inspirational leader. I haven't shown up as a father the best way that I possibly, or a partner or whatever. But all we need to do is sometimes is actually just stop and actually consider for ourselves, how can I show up differently and be more inspirational? If you do that on a daily basis, just to remind yourself, how am I going to show up? You dramatically will improve your performance in how you're kind of showing up. And if you do that on a daily basis, great. If you do it on a weekly basis, and choose one thing that you're actively going to do every single week to be a more inspirational leader, following any of those words that you put, you're going to upgrade yourself 52 points. One upgrade every single week. So think about what a 52-point upgraded version of yourself is going to be. What you need to do is you need to think about what's one action, what's one insight, one action that you can take away from today to implement that for next week, and then review that and then do it next week. So it's not a massive matter of kind of like new information that this is what you need to do. It's all within us, but how do we express it? How do we actually have the impact that we want? So let's get into it a little bit more. So just jump in the chat and say yes if you've heard of this book, or no if you have not heard of this book. Jump in the chat, yes or no. Have you heard of this book? Yes, no, read it perfectly. Yes, read it. No, no, yes, no, no, no. Okay, so this was a fantastic book. It was based on research. It was a research project done in the 80s to really identify what actually made organizations go from being normal and good to suddenly seeing exponential growth. What actually was different about them to any other organization? And so if we're thinking about what the inspirational leaders do differently, I think this is a great kind of piece of research to go back to, because it gives us some guidance on, well, if we're not going to talk about theory, if we're going to look at practice, what actually happened, this is what actually got identified. There were 7 key areas from the book. The number one and the first and fundamental difference was that level 5 leadership was what the CEOs and leaders had, which is basically all the words that you've just listed was what those leaders kind of had. And then there's a range of other kind of enablers that they had for breakthrough leadership, but it all started with level 5 leadership. And in that book, it talks about the key attributes, which are very similar to some of the things that you mentioned in there, that but a little bit, just kind of tweaking it a little bit, that they had this personal humility but professional will. So they had this humility that they were soft, but they had this professional will that was very strong about achieving. So it was the balance between these two things. They had modesty, but they had a work like a plow horse. They had diligence in constantly moving forward. They had an attitude of doing whatever it takes. They set up their success for even greater success. They saw things that were kind of beyond them. Success, this is an interesting one. Whenever the organization had success, they put it down to everyone else. And when it went poorly, they took the blame themselves. It's not sounding like such a great role anymore, is it? This level 5 leadership. Like, I take all the blame and none of the glory. We want the glory, but not the other. But level 5 leadership is the other way around. And what they really identified from this research was that the most inspirational leaders, the best ones, were not the larger than life, dazzling celebrity kind of leaders that you see doing the song and the dance in front of everyone. Those were the leaders that might have seen good results initially, but when they left, the organization nosedived and they kind of went down. And so they really kind of gave low long-term results. So level 5 leadership, this is as much as they kind of give you in the book, which is regards to level 5 is about, being up here, down to the bottom. Level 1, we're highly capable individuals, and then we're kind of climbing. And it's a matter of where are we on this spectrum? And I think for a lot of us, it's a matter of being the most inspirational leader. There's some of the attributes to kind of follow, which are some of the words that you've put there. But also it's a matter of like, what's practical for me? Like if I'm working in an organization, I've got a boss. At the end of the day, I have to be a highly capable individual because I need to follow instructions sometimes. Like Bert, for instance, if you go to work and go, I'm not going to deal with that patient because I'm going to be a level 5 leadership person right now, and the poor person's having a heart attack, that's not really helping them. So it's a matter of, but how can we show up and make sure that we're lifting our game with regards to our strategic foresight in how we want to be seen. So what I want to do is I'm going to get into some of the key things for me that are around what people do to step into this level 5. And I like kind of breaking things down to something really, really simple. And I think it comes to two things. One of these things we're not going to cover today, the other one that we will. The first thing is this: the most inspirational leaders, they lead with authentic, aligned purpose and conviction. That is the number one thing. Like, to them, it is a non-negotiable that this is going to succeed because they are so kind of invested in it. And if you're looking around and you're like, well, I'm not that excited about what I do, that's the first thing you've got to focus on. And I often talk about it, about reconnecting with your passion and purpose, because it's there. You just need to rekindle it sometimes. You know, like as an engineer, for instance, I got bogged down in filling out bloody QA forms and, you know, programs and finance and being beaten over the head and all this kind of stuff. But how I kind of rekindled my passion with that was to realize the 1840s version definition of civil engineering is harnessing the forces of nature for the benefit of mankind. And I kind of then started to go, well, if we can deliver this project cheaper and faster, we can actually save lives from the improvement in the infrastructure. That's pretty worthwhile. And when I really realized that, and when it got tested, when unfortunately I had to be a witness to a coronial investigation, it really showed up to me. Yeah, this is so important. So that's the number one thing, is actually reconnecting your purpose to the work. Why is it that you do what you do? That is the number, that is, for me, that is the number one thing. That's the one that we're not going to cover today, because that's kind of like a bit of a personal journey on kind of going, maybe you do know what your thing is. But the number two is what we're very much going to focus on, because some people know kind of, you know, they're an authentic kind of leader and all that kind of stuff. They know kind of what who they are and what they're about, but their impact is letting them down. And this is what we can do, is we can learn from these. So number two, these are capabilities that can be learned. Number one, we can go through thinking processes to understand it, but it's very much a personal thing. Number two, there's capabilities that can be learned there. So regardless of where you're at, that you can implement these things to be a more inspirational leader, have a greater impact. So I'm going to get into them now. So the first thing is this, which is about, do you have executive presence? And you can take the word executive out and you can kind of put anything there. But this has very much been the research and the articles about having presence. You know, we talk about it, oh yeah, that leader's got presence, but what actually is that? And that's what we're going to go into a little bit. The thing to think about as a leader, as an individual, is that you're always making an impact. You're making an impact through your words, through your actions, what you do, what you say, how you live your life, how you dress, how you're everything. You're always making an impact. But the key thing is that the right impact? My mum always used to say to me, oh yeah, I always have to go back. I always go everywhere twice, the second time to apologize. And so it's a matter of, you know, whenever you're doing anything, to be really intentional with what you're doing and thinking about the outcome that you want to achieve. And some of you might have seen this image before, which is just, you know, footsteps in the sand, because you make an impact, but then you leave an impression behind for people. And all we need to do is we need to consciously think about, what is the impression that I want to leave? Therefore, what is the impact that I want to have? Therefore, and then we're going to go through some tools and tactics around, but ultimately it's a matter of how do you show up? How do you be seen? How do you communicate? And those things to have the desired effect, all the way down to leaving the impression that you intended. As I'm going through this, if there's any particular questions on things, please put them in the chat. I've got them open there because I can kind of include the answer in the questions for everyone. So that impression greatly influences, therefore, what you're able to achieve, because no one can actually achieve it on their own. And so some people go, yeah, why do I need to focus on all this? It's about me being an inspirational leader. But it's in the eyes of others that you are. Therefore, you're going to be judged by the success that you actually achieve through engaging with others. So we start from that end and kind of then work back. A good question. Do I believe that all political leaders are influential leaders? I think the answer to that is no for me. But everyone put in the chat what your view of that question is. I would say no to that question. But not all. But some are. But some are not. But I also think that what I might see as an inspirational leader might be different to you as well, and so that's totally okay as well. But the key thing is that you need to actively manage the perception that others have of you. And that's not that you need to act and behave just to kind of fit in, but you need to consider, well, where am I not getting those outcomes that I want? And what does that mean for me? And how do I need to change things to get the impact that I really want? Thanks for the laughing emoji. Because if something's important to you, like in life, if anything is important to you, you don't leave it up to chance. You actively manage it. So if how you're seen by others and having impact and being a more inspirational leader is important to you, then you've got to more actively kind of manage that. Keep the questions coming, because it's great because other people can kind of answer them as well as we kind of go. So impact and presence, not what you have, but what you do. They're skills, not talents. And they can be learned. And that's what we're going to go through. I'm going to give you a number of strategies and tips about just grabbing, like grab one of these. Just grab it and try it and see how it goes. And also, what I suggest for people is you can try it if you're married, if you've got a partner, if you've got family members, if you've got kids, or if you've got someone. Just use this stuff and see what kind of happens. So let's go for it. I think you pretty much did this, but if I say to you, what are the characteristics of leaders with impact and presence or inspirational? Just let's go for it again in the chat. What are some of the words that kind of come up? Because I've got a slide that I'm going to show you next, and I want to see how close you are. So what's the characteristics of leaders that have got impact and presence and are inspirational? They've got listening. Thank you, Lyndon. They've got listening skills. They achieve results. They're visionary. They have influence. They're listeners and influencers. Yep, keep going. Charisma, confidence. Yeah, we're going to be talking about confidence in a little bit. Empathy, in the moment. Oozing with charisma. Oh, oozing. I don't think I've ever oozed, but let me know if I have, because I'd like to I'd like to replicate. Good hair, Dave says. Or a shiny head, maybe. Excellent. Respect, Yasmin's put there. So these are the leadership characteristics that came from a research model, and I forget we normally put the link on where they kind of came from, but this was a model. I can't remember now the model, where they looked at the leadership characteristics that people were kind of looking for, and you've picked them up. They're confident, courageous, authentic, genuine, but they've got these other things where they've got humor and humility. Like I can see Dave laughing there. What's Dave laughing at? He's probably just messaged Deliro directly. So having humor is kind of important. It's not just all about being, deadly serious and thinking, because I reckon people who you see who are so busy at focusing on dealing with and showing up in a way that they're always thinking about how they're seen by others, that they're actually they almost become emotionless, because they become like a little bit, and this is with politicians, they literally become like a little bit of a cardboard cutout, because they're constantly thinking, right, how am I going to be seen? What do I need to act like? And that's not what we're saying. We need to think about it, but we need to have, credibility and humor and trustworthiness and everything else like that. We've got to have that basic connection with people. That's really important. So speaking with leadership impact, so let's get practical. Let's get into some of the things. What is it that you can actually do? The first thing is that we need to think about our visual, our vocal, and our verbal. These are the three things that we've kind of got. If you have, like, I've only got this way of kind of connecting with you. So visually, how do I kind of present? Like Stephen, for instance, if you were doing a job interview, I reckon you'd choose a different background. Like for this, absolutely okay. Doesn't kind of matter. Do you know what I mean? But like visual, what do they see? How am I representing myself? And my wife is the best one of this, of going, Robin, seriously, pay a bit more attention to the way that you kind of look. Our vocal is, like the terminology that we're, the pitch, the tone, the excitement. It's all those kind of dimensions that we kind of bring. What's the energy that we're kind of bringing to it? And then the verbal, what are the words that we're actually choosing to use? Because sometimes different words impact in kind of different ways. And we need to think about the three, because it's not just about reading off a script. It is about how we're seen and the energy that we bring, and then also the verbal side of things. So always thinking about, when you're thinking about what's the impression that I want to have, think, how do I need to show up visually, vocally, and verbally in this given situation? Just brainstorm some things for you is a super easy way to kind of think about this. Now, this is my biggest tip out of the thing, is that the research showed that we judge people straight away within a few seconds. And two factors are the 80% is down to two factors. And then there's a whole category of other kind of specific ones. So if we want to be more inspirational and impactful, we need to focus on these two. And it's simply this, and that's why we've got to remember this, because 80% of your impact on people relates to the balance of your warmth, which is how, everyone's got one of these like uncles or aunties or nanas or whatever that's just warm and they're just lovely. That's warmth. They're just lovely people you want to be around. But strength is the people who have got the skills, tools, capabilities. They've got that commanding skill set to go, right, strength, we need to do something about this now. This is a non-negotiable. Strength, again, using a wife example. My wife tends to tell the kids quite a few times to do something. And then she will say, can you speak with these kids? And I say, William, Edward, can you go and do this? And they go, okay. And they go off and do it, which is highly infuriating for my wife. But it's a matter of that strength, of that, using the visual and vocal and verbal. What is it that you can do to demonstrate that strength? So 80%, how can you be more inspirational? It's about considering these two factors of warmth and strength. And again, just keep the any questions coming in there. So we tend to make snap judgments about people. And what's really important to do, it's both considering these two factors, like in the first kind of interactions that we have with people. Because the thing is, how to be seen as a more, most inspirational leader is they start with this in mind and they continue with this in mind, that leaves that ongoing legacy. So they're disciplined with their approach is one thing that they do differently. They're not just kind of good at the start, with the relationship stuff, and then kind of beat you over the head with, but you're not performing on results. You're not performing on results. You're not performing the results. They have that integrity with their values all the way through. And like I say, the sweet spot is in this blue, depending on if you're colorblind or not, I suppose, or if I'm colorblind, in this blue spot, which is, it's not all about being 100% there or 100% there. It's like, where do you need to and want to be in the middle kind of zone here? And this is the sweet spot that people who we admire are hitting that sweet spot. So this is for you to consciously think about for yourself. Now, these are the emotional responses. If we put strength on one side and we put weakness on the other, it just draws it out that you need to get this kind of right. Because if you've got the strength and you've got the warmth, you have admiration for people. If you have no strength and you're all warm and you're all kind of nice, we pity those people because, oh, they're lovely, but they're going to be taken advantage of. If we have the strength but no warmth, we have either envy for them or we fear them. But that's not very inspirational. Is it hitting the sweet spot, or is it doing sometimes and the other times? Yeah, Dave, you've got to be a little bit careful with that, because it can be seen as bipolar to people in the way of, okay, when it suits Dave, he's nice, but as soon as we come under pressure, he hits us over the stick with the results. Oh, where's nice Dave gone? Do you know what I mean? We don't know what to get. But there's times and places for being more warm and more strong. So yeah, which is the real Dave? Dave, you might not want to answer that question when this is being recorded. So just think about this. You know, we see it in others, but where are we? Where are we really? Where people may be pitting us because we're too warm, or where are they envying, fearing us because we've got no kind of strength? And then where someone's got no warmth and no strength, we just have contempt for them because who are you? We've got no idea. So this is where we want to be up in here, this inspirational kind of side of things. So someone said earlier about talking with conviction. Absolutely. So how do we impart and be influential? We always need to be coming back upstream, because if you don't sound or look like you're confident, and you don't think that you are, then you're not going to come across that way. So the number one thing for actually coming across with more conviction is know your shit. It's what you need to do. It's a matter of clarity. Clarity is the key thing in talking with a conviction. And I'll go through a little graph. I thought it was next, but I'll go through a graph in a second. So these are some of the words that you put earlier that you want to see in an inspirational leader. Where we build trust is where we're demonstrating these different behaviors from either end of the spectrum. So yeah, I think that's what I need to say about that. Convictions made the biggest difference to me as a leader. I used to overdo humility. Yeah. This is where you build trust, which is in the balance of this. And be careful, like, you know, what came up about being bipolar with it, and people then just get confused. Because one of the things, we did an exercise on building trust, and we did it with different groups, and then we got people to evaluate them on trust. There was one group that were dodgy all the way through, the way they played dodgy. There was one group that played really, really well, trustworthy all the way through. And then we had one group who played well at the beginning and then changed halfway through and then went a bit dodgy and then kind of came back at the end. When we got the scores of the trust about how everyone viewed them, it was really interesting, because the consistently good people got like 9 out of 10 on the trust scale. And the people who were consistently dodgy, when evaluated for trust, actually got, I think it was an average of 7.5. Because everyone said, at least you know what you're going to get with them, which was really interesting. The people who were good at the beginning and then bad later, they were the people who got, I think, 3 from trust. So it's really interesting that the need for consistency is really, really, really important. Like I say, again, it's about the congruence. It's where is my visual, vocal, and verbal? We need to see a convergence of that, because where I'm saying and acting and behaving, but the way I show up is very different. There's a discongruence, if that's a word. There's a discongruence, and where there's a discongruence, it makes us kind of go, wait a minute, this doesn't stack up for us. So we're looking for congruence in everything, in the way that we act, the way that we behave, the way that we show up, the way that we dress, the way that we speak. And we're looking for that congruence, and we're looking for that consistency is what's needed in building that trust. And again, that's what people with the most influential kind of people do consistently well at. So this was the bit that I thought was coming there, but it's now coming here. So communicating key messages concisely and clearly. So jump in the chat. What do you think you need to consider to be able to communicate key messages concisely and clearly? I've given you one, which is know your shit. What else do you think are some of the key things that you need to consider? to be able to communicate concisely and clearly with conviction. Transparency, understand your audience. Yeah, good point, Rupert. Clarity of voice. Yeah. Know the problem or issue. Definitive language, Dave. Yeah, because that's the definitive language shows the strength. But if you're using definitive language about feelings, that shows the warmth kind of side of things. You know, like if I say something like along the lines of, I can see everyone's hurting right now. You know, it's very definitive language, but it's about an emotional state that people go, yeah, we are all hurting. Okay, let's move them through. So, right, what do we need to do about this now? Perfect. Good stuff. So then you just need to ask yourself to know my audience, to know the problem or issue, to use definitive language, to have clarity of voice. What do I personally need to do to achieve that? For me personally, and this is where your personality preferences will kick in, because you need to consider this for yourself. For me personally, what I tend to do, if I'm really going to do something, I literally need to kind of script it out in some way for myself. I need to get really kind of clear in my message. I need to put kind of a structure around it. And once I kind of, for me, in my brain, once I've got that storyline, all my notes I can just put away. I don't do anything with notes because it's in here. The storyline's kind of locked. Other people don't need to do that kind of writing down. Other people literally need to script it out like a script. So it's a matter of you need to work with your own preferences around this. But we'll give you this tool here as well, which is that now we're going to get onto some of the effective strategies and things that you can do, is that you've got kind of so you've got the belief in yourself kind of on the side there, and you've got your belief in your message. And so, you know, when you've got a high belief in yourself, but you don't have belief in the message, that's when you can kind of come across as arrogant. Where you don't have belief in yourself and you don't have belief in the message, you can be seen as hopeless. And that's again where I love this one, because often, like, I just look at this similarly to the other chart that we showed you with the warmth and strength, that in my mind, I know that I would love to be in that top right-hand quadrant. Equally with this, I know that I would love to be in that top right-hand quadrant. If someone said to me, oh, where are you? I would say up there. But then when I'm actually truthful with myself, I'm like, oh my God, totally. I am in that arrogant quadrant sometimes. I'm totally in that hopeless quadrant sometimes. I'm totally in that self-doubt kind of quadrant sometimes. And so what is it that I need to do to either have confidence in self and belief in self? And what is it that I need to do to have belief in my message? Most times with this, we say to people is be hard on the problem, easy on the person. Get out of yourself and write stuff down so that you can increase your levels of clarity about self and on message and point to kind of move you up on that scale as well. So a few other kind of effective strategies is to have a convincing rationale with evidence. Because some people say, well, what if you're not convinced yourself? And I say, you've got to start with yourself. And there's a tool called the ladder of inference. People come to conclusions based on interpretation, based on data that they have. How do we convinced about stuff? If I was selling you a car and I said, look, it's a trustworthy, you know, it's a great car, trust me, you wouldn't say, trust me, I need to give you some facts. It's done this amount of mileage, it's done this. And what I tend to say to people is if you can have 3 points of substantiation, 3 facts. So this is my conclusion based on X, Y, and Z. People go, fair play. You know, it's actually just a super easy thing to do. So the facts speak for themselves. You know, all the evidence supports taking this kind of action. Let's look at the metrics. These are some of the quotation things that you can actually take away. These are some of the things that you can take away and do. But what I say is effective strategy in being convincing. State your conclusion, state your parts of rationale, and then ask them a question. And we'll get into that in a minute, which is this, which is balance your arguments with contrary opinion. So consider presenting your proposal as, well, this is my conclusion based on this, but let's weigh up the pros and cons here. So this is the balance of having the strength of this is the direction we're going in, but going, great, but I'm open to contrary opinion. What do we not like about this? What are the risks? What are the things? And embracing that, not shutting people down. This is the thing that's inspirational leaders do differently. Most leaders, when they ask for contrary opinion, tend to shut it down. And this is the opportunity to be totally open to it. So yeah, and there's some other things that I would say here, like, tell me all the reasons why this is really a stupid way of doing it. Let's actually challenge ourselves to kind of think about it. One of the other kind of key things about talking with conviction and having this influence impact is reduce and simplify. Think about your key points and make them strong. There are 3 reasons why we should do this, and then tell them the 3. Because what you're doing is, and it's another point I'm going to say, is you need to paint a picture in people's minds and make it easy for them. Because as soon as I say to you, right, there's 3 reasons why we should do this, what are you thinking in your brain? What does your brain start to do? Just come off of mute, someone.
You start to overthink it and over strategize it. Your mind tends to go off on a tangent and makes it more complex than it needs to be.
Yeah. Yep. If I say to you, there's 3 reasons why we should do this, what else happens in your mind?
There's more clarity, and there's something to focus on.
Yeah, you know that there's 3 things that are going to come at you. Cool. Don't have to remember lots. It's just there's 3 reasons, and your mind literally goes, get ready for the 3. Get ready for the 3. Do you know what I mean? And you literally count, because how many times people say, right, I've got 3 things, and they only give you 2. And the person says, that was only 2. Where's the other 1? Thank you. Because you're priming the person's kind of brain. You're keeping it simple. There's lots of reasons why you should do things, but let's focus on the key ones that are the non-negotiable ones that are going to help kind of get the person across the line. Too much detail often confuses and overwhelms. And even in this presentation, going through the strategies, I'm like, right, what ones are the ones that I want to do? And I took stuff out to kind of give you some of the cut through ones to kind of help. Also in negotiation, the more you give as information, the more you're giving away for the person to kind of attack you almost. That if you go, the reason why we need to do this is because of X, Y, Z, it's almost kind of more defendable in that way, and helps kind of move people in a direction. This is a really interesting chart, and it's a matter of helping with the simplify, because when we're in the blue, there's lots and lots of data, there's lots and lots of information, but we need to kind of draw upon that to go, right, what knowledge does that now give us? And as individuals, then we need to consider, we need to go into the green. How do I communicate intelligence? Not data, not information, not knowledge, but how do I actually communicate intelligence? And sometimes in communicating my intelligence, it's actually about the quality of the questions that I ask people. It's not about proving to you that I know what I'm talking about by, telling you everything that I've done in my career to date. I can just demonstrate the intelligence, through a different way. And what happens is the most inspirational leaders very much operate in that green. That's not to say that they don't know the data, the information, the knowledge. It's just that that's in the bank, that's there, that's assumed. But how do I communicate the intelligence that I have to enable decisions and actions and value to be created? That's the mindset that we need to be in. So this is one of those ones that I really love this, because it's a conceptual thing, and you might be thinking, right, how do we do it? Some of the other tools and tactics will help you kind of get there as well. But it's like, just let that kind of sit there, because even for, like for me and others, it's a constant kind of thing to make sure that we're focusing on that green. Like I'd have it as a little printout or a thing to remind yourself of. This is one way that you can tangibly do it, which is, and you might have heard this, sell the benefits of things rather than the features. Sell the benefits. And I'm going to give you some examples of this because people get this really, really wrong. Because a feature is what something is. If I look, and I've always got fruit, being a kind of a raw vegan, look, I've got an apple here. You know what I mean? Like, it's low calorie. It's fantastic. You should be having this. You know, that's a feature. It's not a benefit. What's the benefit of an apple? Someone jump in the chat or come off of mute. What's a benefit of an apple?
It keeps the doctors away.
It keeps the doctors away. That's good. And we'll talk about away language and towards language. What's a more inspirational? I think I've got a more inspirational version here.
Good health.
Healthy, good for us, good for health. Yeah, that is. But we want to making it a bit jazzy. I'm going to look better than the donkey from accounting at the end of the year party. That's the benefit, you know. That's the real benefit that I'm going to look like, you know. I live in a location where Chris Hemsworth lives, and so I'm going to look more like Chris Hemsworth, you know. That's the benefit. And so too often we get caught in the trap of going, well, it's low calorie, it's good for you. It's not selling it to me, you know, like eat that and I'm going to look better and get better outcomes than other people. That's the benefit. So you've got to think, I think Rupert said about it earlier, you've got to know about the audience. That's what's kind of key. And what is the benefit that they're looking for that you're going to get through. And simply this is how you turn a feature into a benefit. You just need to add this saying, but what this means for you is ... That's all you need to do. And I think if you guys would have gone, what this means for you is, it's healthier and it's better, you know, you're not, but what this means for you is that you are going to live longer. You're going to be able to exercise with your kids. You know, you're going to be attracting people into your life that you want to be attracted into your life, for instance. So I think this is one of the final kind of things to kind of get us in it. Marlene, you kind of mentioned it, which is we've got to understand people's decision making as well, because they're making a decision. Are we an inspirational leader or are we an idiot? And there's a bit of a fine line between those two things. So how do people decide whether to say yes or no to us? Influence, like I said earlier, relies on people being able to see things in their heads. So always the thinking to do is, how can I paint the most effective picture in their minds? So that's how we kind of influence what's going on in their mind, but what picture can I paint for them so that they can see the future that I can kind of see. So it's getting in their heads and painting that picture and being as descriptive with the words as possible. And the way to do this is a little bit of what, you know, in that last example, is that we need to use both towards language. We need to use towards language and a little way language to motivate them. So if you do this, good things will happen. That's towards language. Away language is, if you don't do this, bad things will happen, and you insert kind of like the good and the bad. Using this with kids is kind of like a bit of a thing, you know, if you do this, then this is going to happen, but if you don't, you're going to get kind of punished on the other end of the stick. Now, in balancing towards and away language, these are some percentages here to give you a bit of a guidance that of actually spending time, because we inherently, you need to be balanced with the away and the towards language. And in actual fact, people have got caught out, even in political campaigns, where they haven't actually been, thanks, Rupert, they haven't actually been talking about all the away language. They haven't been talking about the other political party. They've just been going, look, you come for us because we're doing all this positive stuff, and they haven't used that away language. And that's actually been a problem in a political kind of campaign that I'm aware of. Most often or not, they do it the other way around, as Cheryl's kind of indicating. I think that it's all kind of away language. Look, you don't want the other mob in. Like, what about us, for instance? The pain gain, I would say, so that you don't kind of come across as bipolar in that way, is about being balanced with this. Is the model back to front, towards, or away? Yeah, it depends how you look at it, I suppose. Away from problems. No, towards gain. No, that's right. Yeah. Maximizing reward, minimizing risk. Yeah, yeah. So pain and gain. The one thing is, though, that in psychology, people actually run 3 times faster away from things than towards things. And if you think about it, it makes sense. We run away from dying, because we want to make sure that we really, really do that. If it's like, even someone say, Robin, if you do this, there'll be an improvement for you. And I just kind of go sometimes, I just can't be bothered. So sometimes we're more reluctant to go towards the inspirational stuff, but we're definitely going to avoid that. But with that statistic, it's useful to understand, but be careful of overplaying it, because otherwise you become the leader that's always like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. We've got to run away. We've got to run away, and that type of thing. And so balancing these two things is important. But I think this is an important statistic to be kind of aware of, and being clear for yourself that it is an underlying motivating factor for people as well. So this is the away language. Look, we don't want this and we want more of this. And I think in your example, with the apple, about what's the benefit of the apple, this is the more extreme that we want to go to. We're kind of like, do you want that, or do you want to tidy a desk? No, we actually want this, and this is the picture to kind of paint in people's minds, that more aspirational one, so that it's clear, to really get, what do breakthrough results actually really look like, and getting people to see that they are achievable is pretty important. So we need to persuade and we need to motivate, get into the hearts and the minds of people. It's the combination of things. It is the facts, but it is the feelings, and it is the tangibles, and it is the intangibles. We need this balance of both. And the most inspirational leaders, where there is 2 spectrums between stats and feelings, it is about considering both, and the middle way is the thing that they do both, not just going for, like lurching from one aspect to the other. So some key points: be absolutely clear what your vision is, exploit multiple forums, every meeting, every conversation. It's about being consistent with what is an upgraded version of yourself. What does a more inspirational leader such as yourself look like, smell like, taste like? What do they act? What do they say? What do they do? Keep it simple. Yeah, use metaphors. You paint that picture in people's minds. Repeat. Say it time and time again. But be careful about being a broken record as well, if it's not inspirational, for instance. But you need to be looking at consistently getting your positive messages across. Use every vehicle possible to be consistent to your message and your vision and your strategy, and that discipline about being consistent, which is obviously a lot easier if you kind of know that you're clear about you and who you are as an authentic leader, and your commitment to consistency kind of with that. And obviously remember, 80% of your impact relates to warmth and strength. That's the easiest one to kind of remember, is like, I'm needing to be, how can you balance that up better for yourself, would be one of the key takeaways. We've got a few minutes. Questions. Any questions from anyone on anything at all? Just come off of mute and we'll answer a couple of questions, and then I can go through a little bit more about Inspire Me for those people who are interested.
Robin, do you think people tend to avoid pain more than gain?
Yeah, they do.
They have stronger avoidance.
Well, it depends how you say it. It does amaze me sometimes, the pain threshold that people have. And I think sometimes people are experiencing pain, but they don't even realize it. Like, I have conversations with people and go, yeah, how is your home? You know, oh, things are a bit stressful, but I think I'll be okay. Well, how's this impacting your relationship with your partner? Oh, well, to be honest, it looks like the whole relationship's on the rocks. And you have kids, don't you? Yeah. That sounds like it's kind of, you know, it needs to be dealt with. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes we don't realize how bad things have got, and we actually need a little bit of a clarity kind of around that. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that we're making unconscious decisions lots of times, to be honest, that we're not actually realizing for ourselves what is the impact, what actually is important, what is the pain and the consequences for us, and then drawing our attention to it. Because if you are aware, wait a minute, I could take an action that is incrementally moving me towards a heart attack. If you thought that at that moment of about to eat that hamburger, you probably wouldn't eat that hamburger. Or maybe you do, I don't know. But you're less like, that's why the branding on cigarettes is the way that it is. Do I want to be doing that? But people do come desensitized to that. Yeah. Yeah, more inspirational leaders, they move to the why, the purpose. Why are we doing this? And if you're not clear of your why, that's the number one tip as well from the beginning, is know your why. Why is your work important to you? Yeah, and then communicate that authentically. Absolutely. Other questions? Any other questions got? Yeah, Cheryl, you look like you got a question.
I didn't realize. Am I muted or no? Oh,
no, you're unmuted. I can hear you.
I was just going to ask, who have you found to be inspirational leaders over the last 10 years, I guess?
Oh, you know, that's a really interesting one, because when I actually think about it, the number of leaders that I actually think about as inspirational, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of like, I see like this, you know, inspirational as in world leader, you know, type your Barack Obamas or your, you know, whoever.
Yeah.
Jacinta Ardern's or whatever like that, in terms of role modeling. But but then there's your immediate circle from your peers and your work environment, I guess, or your industry.
I actually there are people who I really put up on a kind of pedestal, like Mark Gordon, for instance, who's one of the managing partners of Vantage Partners out of the Harvard Negotiation Project on the board of Mercy Corps and international conflict management and stuff like that. He's just like the nicest guy ever, but he's seriously known for what he does. You know, his clients have won the Nobel Peace Prize and everything else like that. But, you know, he then talks to me and says, hey, Robin, what advice have you got for me of what am I not doing so well and how do I need to improve? And I'm like, that's just ridiculous that you're asking me that question. You know, that's where he absolutely has that humility, and that's why he's as good as he does. So there's people like that, for instance, that I really admire. And I think, to be honest, the other thing is that I actually see is the most inspirational leaders that I see in literally every individual. I can be walking in the supermarket and just see what someone does on the spur of the moment when something happens. I'm inspired about that action that they take. Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's too, like, we see, for you to be an influential leader or inspiring leader, that you're somebody at a CEO level or above, like not just the person next to you.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just, you know, the supervisor at Coles. You know, that little cube that has to deal with all the customers complaining.
Oh, totally. And some of the examples of where, you know, like we were dealing with our children who had disabilities, and we had a child and I remember my wife just feeling broken and just sat at the side of the street, and then someone went and bought her a coffee and then just sat with her at the side of the road and went, here, it's tough, isn't it? And bought her a coffee. My wife drank a coffee. She hates coffee. She reacts to caffeine. It's not good. But she said that was the best cup of coffee she's ever had. Do you know what I mean? Because of that, you know, that person was acting in integrity. That means a lot. So, and Dave, of course I was talking about you being the most inspirational leader. Of course I was. Thanks for that private chat. So look, that concludes. We've got a few more minutes. So some of you I know all about kind of inspiring. Some of you might be interested. Oh, is there someone else who's got a quick question?
Yeah, Robin, this is Rajesh here. I'd asked a question in terms of inspirational leaders over the period of time move more closely towards becoming a megalomaniac. Can you explain
Yeah.
me why?
Oh, why? Okay. Why does that happen? It, you know, why? I think it's just that the addiction to power kicks over and the ego kicks in. That's kind of that's really what kind of happens, to be honest. And it's just unfortunate that it does. It's just too tempting for people. You know, if I can have it, why shouldn't I? And they don't see what's kind of served them up until that point. So just a little bit more information about Inspire Me if anyone's kind of interested. And I'm going to put in the chat straight away for you, and we'll send an email with this, that if you want to stay in contact with Inspire Me a little bit more, I'm going to give you some links to use. Where you can get some free resources like the book and all that kind of good stuff. So that's all in the chat there for you. So basically in Inspire Me and the coaching, there's a number of clients here today. We help people unlock complex business and life kind of transitions, to go from confused to clear, to enable people to have the right strategy, to help them be inspirational in having the skills, tools, or tactics that they need to then ignite kind of performance and go through that kind of journey. And we particularly work with people in some form of transition who are wanting to go to the next level, make the next step, or just reevaluate where they are and actually really understand what is, what is my meaning, joy, and purpose in my work, so that I can get clear of that to then take it forward. Like we say, you learn through getting new insights, and hopefully you've all gained, new insights from today and new understanding with some tools and tactics. We all need to accept for ourselves, where are we at? You know, we need that authentic kind of acceptance of, yeah, I could be better, therefore, if I accept that, what strategy and actions do I need to take, so that we're halfway around to go in observation, reflection, inspiration, to keep going around and moving forward in the direction. Because one of the key things that most inspirational leaders do differently is they never stop learning, developing, growing, taking on feedback, having humility, and continuing to kind of move forward. And this is the cycle of which we use in the coaching kind of side of things. And this is the model that we use. So when people feel a bit stuck and not knowing what they need to do, we unlock, which is to understand the inner leader, like who are you, what you're about, what do you stand for, do some personality diagnostics to identify what are suddenly your hidden obstacles in showing up the way in which you want. And it could be, you don't really know what your purpose in work is. It could be around self-confidence. It could be about fear. It could be around negative thinking. It could be about anything. So we need to identify those and remove them, to go into strategic planning about where are you at, where do you want to be to get there, and then plug in the gap. If you're not having the influence and the impact you want to have, because you want to go to the next level, what's some of the skill areas of emotional intelligence mastery, amplifying influence, leadership, impact skills, today being kind of one of those skill sets about leadership impact that we've kind of covered. And then finally, igniting is really about optimizing productivity and going on a journey of high performance, balancing that constant juggle of lifestyle balance and building winning habits for ourselves. So if you're interested in kind of getting any external support, then reach out, use any of the links that are there in the chat. So if you want to jump in the chat now and just copy them and paste them somewhere for you. We'll also, thanks Dave, we will email them to you as well. There's a slide with them all on. I just kind of put it up there. And we're bang on the hour. So thank you very much for everyone attending. Like I say, to become stuck is inevitable, but to stay stuck is a choice. Reach out, always happy. And we will be doing more of these webinars in the future. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right, guys, take care. See you soon.